Print Your Games, printing for gaming. I'm one of your hosts, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perram, and I'm joined by
Kristen Sowards, also known as Seventh Mastery.
And today we've got a very special guest, Matt Guss from TPK. Hey, Matt.
Hey, how are you guys doing? And thank you for letting me be on the show.
You're on the show because we were kind of really excited about what you're doing. But before we get into that specifically, why don't you just tell people like the 30-second version of who you is?
Okay. Well, I am a lifetime gamer. Started playing back in the late 70s with like the first edition. And then from there, it's just been part of my life ever since. I've got two wonderful sons, one who is following in my footsteps and in many ways racing out ahead of me. He is Church of Doom, has his own show out there. Some of your listeners may know about him. And younger son who's a musician, wonderful wife, Lori. And I just love the game, love the hobby that's associated with the game. And, every chance I get, role playing is what I do.
As awesome. Now, before we jump into the main topic at hand, which is why we've got you on the show, which is in the title, here's a hint. It's about really awesome, kind of outside the box terrain projects. What's everybody doing right now? What kind of projects and fun gaming stuff and 3D printed crafty things y'all up to? Kristen.
Well, you might recognize this, Perram. I printed and painted up a whole bunch of these guys. I use them for Farplane monsters.
Oh, the Venom Stalkers.
Yeah, but they're Venom Stalkers from the Alien Hive Army from OPR, which now I have a very good start on. And I think I've told you that I'm kind of like hybriding my OPR army to also kind of be a Mind Flayer army.
Mm-hmm.
So like
fits.
I'm using the same basing. I've got these little like sharp, spiky base things that kind of look like hive bases from Battle Yak, actually.
Ooh.
And then I'm popping them all in there and just kind of trying to paint it up so that it looks like you can kind of combine them in any combination. I've also got like an Elder Brain and some Umber Hulks. Ooh. Although I found another Umber Hulk, or it's like more like it looks almost like the Gothams from Dark Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
From is it a Shonu, I think, minis. Anyway, so yeah, I'm creating all sorts of bug horror aberrations right now, and that's kind of my jam. I mean,
so
surprise!
Your legs, right? Trying
tentacles.
Something different, new. That doesn't.
Yeah, it's not at all, but it's.
Oh gosh, so I am first geeking out about the news that there's going to be that new Planescape box set, and very hopeful. And this is all your fault, Kristen.
Yeah,
because I was ambivalent to the Planes until you convinced me how awesome it was, and then I dove deep, and I was like, oh my gosh, Planescape is kind of awesome. And then throwing 40 hours at that CRPG. I think you of course like lost your life to the old CRPG Planescape tournament, right?
Oh yeah. Actually, Colin McComb, who helped write it, it was in my gaming group actually for 4th edition playtesting. Oddly enough, and he actually went to high school with my brother, so I've known Colin for years. But he worked on the original box set stuff and did Hellbound, if you're familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And then on to Torment. And Torment, of course, is one of my favorite video games of all time. Especially if you find that little Sensate cube that you can use to continually use to get experience from it. So you can power level your characters with it and just rip through the rest of the game and watch the story.
I never found that cube. No.
Yeah. It was just specific sequence of questions you had to do on the memory cubes. I don't know if you remember those, where because the Sensates have like they imprint their memories and store them so they can exchange them amongst each other.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently there was like a memory of being like really powerful or something or other, and you could go through the right sequence and as many times as you want to.
I think I spent 90% of my time in that game opening the map and putting little pins on everybody's character so that because I kept going back and forth on the billion little quests that made me trek across that city.
Oh, yeah.
So when I opened up my map, it was just like a porcupine.
Yeah, it looks like there's some love for it in chat too. Torment is the best video game ever. only one of the ones you could actually talk to the enemy surrender. Yeah, you could. Updated my journal. Nice.
We also have Herberto. Hey, Herberto. Always good to have you in talking about, are y'all ready for Gen Con? Kind of.
I am intentionally ready and like excited. Am I actually prepared? No.
We also have Lord Novus. Howdy.
Howdy.
And we have Joseph in chat. Welcome aboard. The other thing I'm getting ready for is, I told you I'm kind of like getting the itch to play some RPGs, getting the itch to get behind the Game Master screen again, because I've had a little bit of time off. Some of my players have taken over some GMing and run through some campaigns and adventures, and then Tells the Valiant Alpha drops, and I'm like, hey gang, why don't we try it out? And I've actually got my group to agree to let me run us through a brief Tales of the Valiant playtest to see how we're going to like this thing. And that's hopefully going to work out. But that does, of course, mean that I am looking at putting together what sort of 3D printed goodies that I can use for this little playtest campaign. And this is an away game because the best sorts of games are usually the ones that you get to play after hours at game stores.
I actually kind of agree. We play my Saturday game in an after hours bookstore. So, yeah.
So I need something that's portable, and I don't want to go back to those days where Crystal Cast made this like gigantic, basically luggage that you would call, basically just rebranded luggage that you would haul music equipment in. So it was like 4 feet long with wheels and like insert so you could load the crap filled with books and miniatures. And I used to haul that around everywhere, and then like upgraded to like an Eileen's crafting hauling thing to haul my like 800 Pathfinder books and 30 minis and terrain and stuff. So I'm wanting to keep it slim. I'm wanting to come up with like a portable kit that I can like bring to these games, as well as like all the cool minis, and still show off awesome terrain, and not have to like rent a van to get to the game store every time. But I'm not the sort of GM who can half do anything when it comes to the games. I have to bring
Gotta be extra, right? Gotta be extra.
Yeah. Like the fully printed poster maps with the overlays and like the fog of war, which is like cut out hundreds little gray and black, cardstock clouds so that I can move them across the field to reveal the rooms as people move from room to room.
Oh yeah.
I need to do it, but I can't do that hauling thing. So I'm putting together a list of minis to print. I'm looking for like a good way to haul the minis, and I'm hitting a lot of like really cool scatter terrain stuff, a lot of cast and play stuff, of course, from their terrain sets. And that kind of brings us back to our topic at hand, which is, hey, this would look a lot better if I had something really cool looking to put all this pretty minis and terrain on. And Matt, you got a solution for us there, don't you? Something I could like really easily throw into my bag of holding without like, breaking my back to get it to the game store.
Yeah, I think I've got something that'll work for you. Because like everything that you were saying, Jefferson, about like, cutting up pieces of cardboard to have your fog of war in that, I think like every game master, once you like, you take that, you drink the Kool-Aid and you become the forever game master, you're going to try anything you can think of to have the kind of experience for your players that you possibly can. So you're gonna cut up cardboard for things. You're going to steal every bit of scrap that you can find to create stuff. I think it just comes with the territory.
You can build a tavern in your backyard.
Exactly. Or take one of your parents' sheets and turn it into a full-size map of the Middle Earth.
Okay, cool idea. Yeah, that sounds great.
But I think also when you do that, and you get into it and you want to have stuff, you realize a lot of things. Like one, if you don't play at your house, you can play somewhere else. you can't, I mean, lugging boxes around of stuff around it's not fun. Especially when you lug it all there, you get it set up, and the players, when you describe a situation and they ask you a question that's just like an off question, and you kind of just casually answer it with a detail about your world, they say, oh, we want to go there instead. Let's go there. Everything you brought, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I guess we're not doing that. And then you got to figure out how to turn it around. Mm-hmm. And so, I've been a forever GM myself, and I've tried every system. I've got all sorts of different things here. My friends who've been GMs, they've done things as well. And I really, I thought, there's got to be something that we can do for like for you, Jefferson, where you're gaming somewhere else. You got a small area to work with. For people who have tight budgets, they can't afford to buy all of these things. And so for the last couple of years, I've been working on this set that I call Battlestages. That's based upon Ultimate Dungeon terrain that you'll see on Dungeon Craft with Professor Dungeon Master. And the idea is very straightforward. It's to create an environment that you can control as the Dungeon Master, switching out the look of the stage, if you will, that all of your fights and your encounters are on. So these are 3D printable STL files. And the idea is, in my experience, if I set up a bunch of terrain that I'm using for things like moving the characters, the minis from room to room, my players, their eyes glaze over. The only time that the terrain really matters to them is when you roll the dice. It's like, okay, roll initiative. And then they're in it because they want to know where their miniature needs to go. What are they up against? And so Battlestages is built around the idea of optimizing that space, that moment in time, to create this platform that as a GM, you can customize it and switch it out to the setting that works for your encounter. And your players can just get engaged right in that spot right there. It's designed to be portable. You can see right there, that's the base that the color goes on top of.
Now, do keep in mind, we're mostly an audio audience, so we're looking at a base that has been divided into 4 parts, and it looks like Dungeon Pizza. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
it looks like Dungeon Pizza.
I love that.
I like Dungeon Pizza, and it breaks apart, so for easy storage, and it looks like you've got magnets set up to snap it back together.
Yeah, yep. You can do magnet inserts to hold it together, or the kit comes with a dowel you can print, so you can peg the pieces together. It's really designed, so the modular design serves 2 purposes. One is for transport, being able to break it down into small pieces and fit it in a backpack or a satchel along with the terrain and the scatter pieces that you need. It's really easy to do, but also not that many of us have printers that are big enough that you can print that whole pizza. I mean, that base is 18 inches across, and I have a printer that could almost do it, but it's a horrible printer. It can't almost do anything right now. It's been sitting there forever. So most people have prints, the print area is going to be smaller. So by making it modular, that allows people to print the pieces and be able to build as they're setting up their encounters.
I do like that so for people who aren't aware of the Ultimate Dungeon terrain concept, we've talked about it on the show a few times before, but basically instead of like trying to do the Dungeon Forge thing where you like build the entire dungeon terrain out, or you print out like a humongous map of terrain to get everything possible, you're really only focused on the encounter in question. So it's this big circle that you've textured up, or in some method, like in this case, 3D printed textures that look really nice. And then you put 2.5D terrain on it, which means you put like scattered terrain and like interesting 3D elements like you would normally do if you were building out a big terrain setup, but you're only focused on the room or immediate point of action around the characters instead of trying to build the whole dungeon. And it's a circle, so you can turn that thing right around and everybody gets a good view of what's going on.
It turns really well, by the way. I did get to play with it.
Yeah. So. And there's a few different like methods I've seen. I've seen like Professional Dungeon Master's done the whole series of videos on this, and other people have riffed on it. And I like your implementation of it because the base plate is separate from the textures, and it all breaks down. Whereas, like, I've built some Ultimate Dungeon Terrain myself and used it in games and loved it, but like I built like the big 22-inch pizza version.
Nice.
That don't travel well.
Yeah.
And I may have done it double-sided, so I get wilderness on one side and stone on the other to get the most out of it, but it don't travel well when it's the size of a extra large pizza. And
I think that Blasted Slamaflange has like the best summary I've seen so far. Makes me think of old style JRPGs where you have overworld theater of the mind, and then you zoom in on a battle screen.
Right.
There you go.
And that is very much how this feels. It's very much how it worked when I got it.
And your implementation of the idea is really cool, which is... And full disclosure, we originally found out about this because you contacted us to do a sponsored spot, but we thought it was cool enough to like not do a sponsored spot and just have you on as a guest because like I really like it. Plus, like it's really cool to have like some really interesting, innovative indie creation space because like we've been worried for a little bit that like the market bloat and stuff was going to be resulting like only like the big players really putting stuff out for a while.
Yeah, which would be sad. And thank you, by the way. I really I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I love what everybody's saying about it. If the project is funded, and that makes me very happy. And if only a handful of people like the idea and pick up the STLs and run with it, and I get maybe one or two messages that say, "Hey, this is pretty cool." Hey, I'm happy. It's I've always speaking of Dungeon Pizza.
That's what I was like. That's the Dungeon Pizza right there.
I've always wanted to give back to the game. It's something that's been on my mind for a long time. It's brought me so much joy. All the different types of games. I mean, I do tabletop war games as well. And I just reached that point where I thought I've got an idea. I think it'll work really well, and it's a chance to give back and hopefully make some experiences for people. But like the Blasted Slamaflange, he's got it right. This is and I think earlier somebody talked about how this is about setting up a stage, and absolutely the whole concept is if you're the game master and you put all this effort into this encounter, well, I want the stage that encounter happens on to just be as unique and as enjoyable and memorable as possible. I don't want it to overtake what you've done and that, but I want it to complement it. I want it to be something where your players are like, hey, remember when we ran into that beholder and this and that and everything. And I just want that to be something that just assists in making some great memories.
Now, when you contacted us about it, you actually sent some files over our way, and I wish I could have printed them, but like, I was going to take all weekend to get those files printed, and instead, it turns out you're close enough to Christen to reach out and slap him.
That's right.
It's true. We actually
you got to touch it, right?
Oh yeah, I got to play with it last night. Yeah, we met up and we talked about gaming and stuff, and then suddenly I was like, wow, this is my person. We talked for I think an hour and a half.
At least. Yeah, that was so much fun.
So I was like, we did a whole episode right there, and weren't recording it, unfortunately. But and so I got to actually get my hands on it and play with it and transport it. Like, which the funny thing is, I didn't know what to expect when we were meeting up. So I cleaned out the entire back of my car, and my car is not huge. My car's not huge, right? But like, we go, it's all set up. Matt shows me how it works, and we're looking at it. It looks really cool. And then we break it down for me to take it. And Matt has this little like briefcase, and like, it's formidably sized. Maybe like, I don't know what, 8 inches wide, Matt.
Yeah, about that. It's an old salesman's case, I think, from like the 60s and 70s.
And this whole thing like collapses down into that in a little box for the trees so they don't get mushed, right? And like totally could have flown with it on a plane, and certainly did not need to clean the entire back of my car out so that I could put it in there. And it's funny because the entire drive home, I could hear this little like briefcase like sliding back and forth. Fortunately, the trees weren't moving because I'd secured them better than that. But you know, that's the other stuff about this. It's hybrid, so you can use FDM and resin and monopolize on the best qualities of both of them to get that high detail resin on the inlays, and then get a really strong, stable ring for the frames, or if you do the square or whatever it is. And like even while I was talking to Matt, I was like, "Well, you could do this to it, you could do that to it, you could do this to that," and like, you know, like kept like thinking all the things. This is going to be so fun to mod and play around with. And Matt has this crystal set, which is super cool, by the way. You know how I'm obsessed with crystal stuff. So translucent resin, right? But translucent base. So you can put like a lighting source, like an LED or something beneath there under the other terrain. You could even probably get it under the tray if you had a smaller light strip, and get light coming so it looks like the crystals are glowing. And that is,
I love that.
That's so amazing. Awesome. I am so hyped for that. So yeah, definitely going to be printing some of this myself. But the idea of like, you know, fusing the resin and the FDM, getting the train bits, the trees come with this, right?
They do, yes.
Yeah. So there's it's not just the stage; it's like the whole thing. But I got to set up some stuff and play around with it, and just super fun. Like I got to do some interactive stuff, because the inlays, at least currently, I know there's talk of maybe some bevels or something to seat them, but they're currently, you can slide them. And so I actually got to do like a rotational thing where like the dungeon floor spun. And I got to mess around with that. And there's just, it's such a good literal foundation, right? But it's going to be infinitely tweakable. Right. Like super excited about that. So yeah, it was easy to pack. And like I said, just super sturdy, super cool. The way Matt had them packed up, you just slide them down, and there's all the resins pressing up against each other, and it's really like protected, you know? And so I'm super hype about that, because like I rarely think I could take resin printed anything on a plane to go to a convention, but I could do this. This could go. And that is huge for me, because like I like to do fun extra maps and boards and stuff that's really weird looking, and both with the modularity of the inlays, and I could paint them up for different effects. You can swap things in and out. So like if there's a magical thing, like the board I used last night has kind of these crystal inlays on it that are, I think, Matt, did you paint this yourself?
Yeah.
So they're painted up blue, but you could totally do like, have them color change, right? If you were willing to paint separate sets of them. So you could do like light puzzles and stuff where like the inlays changed colors, and it's the sort of thing like I could futz around with for hours.
You get me so excited when you talk about that. I just love it, because that the idea of versatility is also what I was thinking about from the very beginning, and that is, I mean, you know, especially if you're a young game master, you don't have a lot of money, you know, you don't have a big budget. And so if you're going to invest in terrain, the more versatile, the better. And so the idea behind this was to be able to have it so that your stage, your base could be like any forest, and it's just where you place the things, and you can mix and match. You could put cemetery pieces on top of it. You could have a crypt in there. You could have a wizard's tower in the middle. You could put a pond on it. There's all sorts of things you could do from various sources, but not feel like you have to just make this heavy investment in everything. So for me, that versatility was right out of the gate for that. And like when you talk about the crystals and having a light under it, I start thinking about like the base piece of drilling in through the bottom there, having the light up, and all of these flat, massive crystals that have been sheared off by time would all just be glowing on the table. So
I think it'd be super cool.
Yeah.
If Perram, if you want to show it,
all right. So you've got one of these. You have it with you, right?
Yes, I have it with me, and I've set it up so that it's show offable.
Okay. I mean, I actually, I'm really impressed with seeing it seeing the setup that you've got here and how you've managed to set it up. Also, you've got it on a turntable right now.
Yep.
And
Which you could totally do for your players very easily.
And you've mixed terrain pieces. You've got like some wilderness surrounding some marbly stuff.
I didn't quite have a full set of the marbly stuff, but I also wanted to show off, because normally I would have, there's some that are painted leaf inlays that are really cool. But I also just wanted to be able to point to, there's like a tavern floor exterior as well. And I wanted kind of to see that, because I think that's super useful as well. So obviously, if I were to set this up optimally, I would probably match everything, you know, but I wanted to kind of have a variety of stuff on it so that people could see what it looks like. And like these little guys here, those trees are modular. You can pop them off and swap out different things. And these are all part of the offering as well. I love this. This reminds me of the Yawning Portal tavern. Like you could totally do a setup for that. But what I was talking about here with this centerpiece, and I might move. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. This part isn't seated, so you can turn it if you want.
Oh, okay.
So you can do some really wild dungeon manipulation with that. Since these are resin, you could also print fused elements to them. There's so much potential, and like I said, it's a literal foundation that's like super duper cool. Like I am hyped for the possibilities. There's also these crystals, you know, that showed you that there's a crystal inlay set for the middle as well. You know,
right?
He was talking about it again. The translucent resin on the bottom, if you want to do lighting and stuff.
I do like how the basic idea of this is super fun, because like there's the different elements are useful for different situations. Like if I, like for instance, already here at the house, like I've got a few of those big 22 inchers. I wouldn't need to print the base or anything, but using all the modular stuff with this. Well, first, anything that adds to my scatter collection is lovely. And then like there's also like the woodworker in me who is like, well, instead of printing this base, I could just like get my lathe out and like, you know, craft up like an oaken one and then use all these cool inserts in it and swap them in and out.
Sure.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And then there's the reverse of it, where it's like, well, for the portable base, I've got all these cool STLs that you've got, and I could totally like make all my own custom inserts to go into it. Like this has just got my crafter brain going as much as my game master brain going.
Well, and if you have like a CNC or something to cut some like chipboard or you know, really fine wood stuff.
Clearly, I need to go get my laser cutter now. My workshop's not complete until I get a CNC and a laser cutter.
Can we still call ourselves Print Your Games if we get laser cutters too? I don't know.
Just make the title longer. The Print Your Games, laser cutting. It's all good.
Well, we did that one episode that was where we talked about almost printing, where we talked about like all the adjacent tech and cool stuff going on, like with 2D miniatures and laser cut terrain and stuff. Like, I want lasers. Audience, would you object to adding lasers to the show? I mean, there's not going to be a ton of content out there for that, I don't think, but I want more lasers.
Well, it's interesting too, just on the idea of just lasers and sci-fi. That Blasted Camouflage it put out there is just an idea. I play mostly sci-fi, which often has longer ranges than fantasy. You could have several of these for players, you know, way into mech. So one of the things that I would say about the what I've set up and what's available, what's out there is I'm going to be doing not just terrain textures that are fantasy leaning, right? I'm going to be doing post-apocalyptic. I'll be doing I have as part of the stretch goals, there's a spaceport, like a storage bay with a portal, a port that opens up on it, and a whole host of others. So the idea behind this is, you know, you make your base, you get that set up, and then the beauty and the fun is in what do you put on top of it, the different terrain textures that you get, how you mix them and match them, and then, as you said, Jefferson, getting your scatter collection out and just going wild by putting things out there.
And there's I've seen that there when I've seen various people propose this concept ever since the original videos from Professor Dungeon Master came out, like there's been like all kinds of really cool variations on it, and you seem to be supporting a lot of them. It's like originally when it came out, it was like, you put a grid on it because we're used to playing on grids.
Yeah.
And then there was a version of it that is actually the one you led with, which is zoned combat, or like I called it close near far combat, which is a similar concept where you just have stage zones on the field instead of like tracking like individual grid movement. It's just abstracting it. Like, are you in the center? Are you near the center? Are you way out in the boonies?
Exactly. And so for like in a science fiction game where you do have longer ranges, the concept of having those zones even built in, like you can see on the setup we have here, the stone terrain is gridded, but you've got the way the pieces are designed, you can actually print them out in those zones as well. So that outer ring is just very far away. That's long range for your missiles and things like that. The middle ring is close range, and then the centerpiece is immediate. These are people that are threatening you physically.
And we talked about like playing Mutants and Masterminds before the show, which is one of my favorite games to play. But that's when you're starting dealing with like superheroes and stuff, where like some of my characters are able to move multiple miles in a combat round. And so like no terrain is going to be able to accommodate that. But like setting up like one of these with like, a city block kind of textures and like taxi cabs and stuff to help just add some cool 3D terrain elements to a game where it would otherwise be impractical. Though I have built like a 8-foot by 8-foot city once for HeroClix, and that was fun.
Wow, that's awesome. Now I would say for like the bigger games, nothing wrong with printing up a second one and having one setup.
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, you could on the right side.
You could totally do a whole table even, and it would
totally good.
It would still be like two briefcases.
Split the party.
Two briefcases.
Another thing that I'm not promoting as I think as well as I should is what you see. You've got the circular version right there, but every texture, all of the files also come in a hexagon shape, which is about at the point to opposite point is about 17 inches. And then you have a square version, which is 18 inches on each side. And so just looking at that, if you're like, okay, I want a little bit bigger of an arrangement, you can actually set up more and be able to have, like with the hexagons, you could have interlocking hexagons. Talk about a hex crawl. If you set that up and had like the forest in one and a swamp in the one next to it, and then the rolling grasslands, you can.
I will say I actually am tempted by the hex version of this one because I like angles.
Yeah,
it definitely, it's something that would stand out and make it look really cool.
Well, I'm going to throw out another thing with that too, is that you could use this for the hexagonal room in your dungeon with your other terrain, and just have this be the hex. Like I'm saying, I understand that's a departure from the thing, but like I also have a lot of Dungeons and Lasers terrain, and they do not have any hexagonal or circular rooms, and so like to print these out, get that as my portable. That, and then the Dungeons and Laser stuff also breaks down very similarly.
Oh yeah,
as it could be like the cool room, like the boss fight room. Also, Perram, I have another question here. I'm seeing 18 by 18, right? Skirmish 3 feet by 3 feet.
Depends on your game.
But is there a setting for that? I think there might be.
3 by 3 feet by 3 feet is Dead Zone.
Okay.
And Infinity in a lot of skirmish games.
So so printing 4 of those out, you would basically have a portable skirmish board for a lot of games.
Indeed.
Oh, exactly. And it is what am I thinking? I'm thinking of a particular game, but I can't think of the name of it. So it'll come to me.
Yeah, no, there's so much fun to go into here, and like I am also really excited by the idea of fusing resin like bits and was it greeblies? Is that the word, Perram?
Greeblies, yeah.
Put the greeblies on there so you could have like swappable. Like sometimes it really bugs me when like there's something the party loots and it's still on the map because it's there on the terrain piece.
Yeah.
So if they like move the thing, you can actually just be like, nope, it's gone now. I think that's cool.
Oh, absolutely. And that was one of the things that I set out from the very beginning was I wanted these textures to have a look to them, a character to them. So they've got depth. There's elevation changes in the forest one that's done, just modest ones, but you can see how the landscape just has a little bit of a roll to it. And there are a few things on it that give it character, some ferns, a fallen tree, but there's plenty of space to be able to put your own greeblies in that you want, to set down the scatter pieces that come with it so that you can really just have that flavor. And you don't feel like your terrain, your scatter pieces are at odd angles because they're sitting on top of things. It's meant to be as clean as it can be and still get the message across.
And with because you have some that's the whole pie wedges together in some of the STLs, right?
Yes. In fact,
I
was going to say with every design, I really try to make it as universally appealing to the players as possible because we all have our different approaches. Sure. Some people are going to look at them and be like, I don't want those zones. Right. So I'll show you this right here. This is something that I printed the other day. This is a full quarter of the forest terrain, and this is printed in FDM, and I put it close to the camera, but it'd probably be all squishy. But
I can throw it up.
So this one has this one does have the zones in it, but there's another version of this same thing that won't have those zone lines at all. It's just one solid, just plain and simple piece of forest terrain. And and again, that's FDM, and I printed it at 0.16.
Do you have a version of it available for like those of us with like super mega insane printers to print the entire thing in one piece?
Yes, there will be. There'll be a full pizza of it if you want. It's there, and to print out all in one piece. So absolutely, there's so many files people are going to get just for one texture that they buy. So if you get the forest texture, you get it in the circular design, you're going to get the full pizza, the 4 quarters, the individual sections that allow you to print it on a small printer, and you'll get all of and then you get the center, the very center of it as one full piece as well. And every one of those will be in plain or with or grid, because so many people they're like, I gotta know how close I am, gotta know my area spell effect, and so that's all included.
And that really runs to kind of like how I like to run my games at a con, where like I'll have the small map off to the side for like, you're doing the dungeon crawly thing or whatever, or you're going through the wilderness, and you just like off to the side, like, but not, not 1-to-1, 1 inch equals 5 feet square. And when it's time to throw down, like, you throw your map down, you quickly sketch out the encounter area, and then you get to town. And this is just the 3D printed version of that same concept, even if you're not doing zone-based combat or fully embracing the stage combat. Having the grids on there means that you can just like, what I like to do with the ones I've made myself is I have a bunch of like different themed pillars. And I just like put those down in the room corners, and like, this is the room, here's the door, and I throw down a door in there like you have on some of your tavern instance. And that like, and there everybody knows where the room is and how big the room is, but there's no walls in the way to block your line of sight. And you throw the furniture down and the minis, and it's all the benefits of playing on the Dwarven Forge table, and all that experience compacted and easy to set up. And I tell you, I've said this on the show before, I had like a full, like the giant collection of Dwarven Forge, like everything you wanted, all fully painted, like the Dungeon Master Dream setup. And I got rid of it because of how much of a pain in the butt it was to set that stuff up and play in it. And then it's like you said, a change of plans. It wasn't just hauling the stuff in. It was like the 2 hours before the game that I had to sit there putting little corner pieces down and measuring out everything, and all that stuff. And it looks glorious. It looks awesome. They sell that stuff so well. And then like, got rid of all that. and I do like 2.5D or low walls or
yeah. Matt and I were talking about that at Hasser the other day. Is that the low walls are what our players want anyway? Like they don't want to like crawl over the dungeon to like look down in this little trough that's only 2 inches wide, right? That's super obnoxious. And you can just.
It works if you've got one of those like recessed game table areas where everybody's looking down into it and they're not in the way. But I do the opposite. Like I play with raised game table surfaces. Like, I built these like really cool folding all wood oak raised platform that brings it up 3 inches, so like all your character sheets and books and stuff slide under the table, and then on top we have all the game ready to go, and we play our war games and our RPGs and our board games on that. But that means that the walls get in the way even more. Like that's why I got rid of walls. Like everything is either the low walls or no walls, implied walls, or back walls. And the battle stage is really perfect for either of those options, where like if you do have walls, you just put walls on the one end away from the players, and then you can like let them know, and then you put like the stuff that matters, and the players are already used to playing with tic tacs and starbursts. This is like this is the next dimension above tic tacs and starbursts.
Yeah, I did Tic Tacs and Starburst when I was a kid, for sure. And I don't have. I mean, I love Dwarven Forge myself. My best friend, we have gamed since we were kids together. He has a full set of it as well, and we thoroughly enjoy it. And we'll set up. He'll set up for the evening. We get there and everything's laid out in all of its glory, and I think that's fantastic. Just so many drawbacks for, I think, in many respects, the style of games that are today. Today's games are so much about getting into the role playing of the character and character development and story development, and so much of that is theater of the mind.
When I was a kid, dramatic scene,
dramatic scene. And when I was a kid and we were playing, and we had this dungeon we were going through. I would make my players move their miniatures down the hall. Into the empty room that was just before they got into the room with the monster in it. And because that's how the game was back then. It was the dungeon crawl. You're moving around. You got to be where you got to be. I got to know where your miniature is so I know whether or not the monster can see you. And now it's so much theater of the mind, and this just plays into, as soon as the theater of mind opens up into let's see it. You get to run with it.
Well, I think if actual plays a critical role, and like when they bust out the minis there, it's maybe a couple rooms, or it's a big dramatic scene. It's the tower where they're fighting the Archmage and they're fighting outside, right? And he's flying and stuff, or there's like an airship or whatever. It's like one thing. And I think that's really, you're kind of nailing it with this idea where the big scene kind of happens in that one place. And this, especially for travel gaming, I cannot emphasize how joyous breaking down and taking this thing and reassembling it was. I've even, and like I said, I love my Dungeons and Laser stuff, but you got all the snaps and the pegs and the little pins and all that stuff to kind of do it. And it's not quite as bad as Dwarven Forge, because I have a set of Dwarven Forge too, not very much of it, but it was really like clunky to build out for me.
Was it the old bow tie connector versions?
Yes. Yes. Anyway. But this, with the magnets and everything, it literally is just like put them next to each other. They snap together. You start the inlay process, and you're good to go in like 5 minutes. And it just, like I said, took no space in my car.
Right. I'm looking at like when I got used to run games at conventions. This would like, I would be like king of the Paizo room throwing this thing down for the encounters there.
Mm-hmm. That would be perfect for like PFS or Adventures League. Yeah. Yeah. Super cool.
Oh, absolutely. We, my older son and I went to Gamehole Con before COVID.
Love Gamehold. Gamehole Con. Love it.
So much fun. And the people there are amazing. And we both signed up to run games. We each ran a different adventure that my son had written. At that time, he'd started a company called I'm having a brain cramp here. Quest Chests, and he was putting together a whole bunch of adventures And we went there to kind of see how the adventures would work. And each of us had a different one. But just for this simple adventure where I'm doing this lighthouse thing, I had several cases I had to bring with me at the time to reflect all the different locations and the different things. And it was pretty cumbersome, and it was just a one shot. So yeah, I think, for people going to conventions, if you're running a show, you want lean and impactful.
How much space would it take if I wanted to bring one of these in like 3 different textures, so I could have my wilderness encounter, my town encounter, and my dungeon encounters?
I'm gonna do a visual on this one.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've got that.
Can you show us?
Yeah,
Kristen can show the case.
Break it down.
Yeah.
We get the case. That's a little. It's like across from. I can go. I'm actually just gonna show you one of the tiles really quick though, because like these things, like cool tile, right? Cool tile. And if you're listening to this is like an archway of, I don't know what. It's the middle ring, so about 10 inch diameter. Just guessing.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Look how thin that is. So you're packing those up and you're just stacking them.
So that's a resin piece?
Yeah, it's resin. And like I said, because it's resin, you're going to be able to fuse stuff to it too. Like I said, I think it's neat. But when you're not fusing it, you've got this really thin thing to work for, and they just stack up. And like the outer ring is in sections like this, so they can just go. I mean, we're not even to half an inch yet, right? Like and stacking up a whole theme maybe takes 2 inches, and that's at the this total. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
5 to 6 inches.
Your average fantasy flight board box, like the square ones, would I be able to fit it all in that?
I would think so. Your scatter might be where you start to run into issues of
how many scatter and minis you took would be the thing, but no, the thing itself fits. Most of the pieces fit in just the middle chamber of that briefcase, so it was like maybe 3 inches across, 4
thereabouts.
Yeah, and
then
if
you print it out in like quarters, then if you think about like 4 quarters of that thickness, but you put your textures together, you're looking at about that much space. For like literally,
it's about the same space as like a flip map. If I folded up a few flip maps in my, are you familiar with the flip maps? Yeah.
Okay, so this was in the middle chamber.
Well, let me throw.
It's about 3 inches. Right? I will try to give you a shot of how much stuff. I don't want it to fall out, but there are 8 or 9 stack thicks.
Okay.
And so this has at least 2 or 3 themes in it.
Nice.
Just this space. So again, that's fitting in the bottom of your suitcase. It's fitting in like a little briefcase. Insanely portable.
So what do you need to print this stuff? Like what kind of equipment? Like do I need to have, like, is this filament required, resin required? Do I need to go get a Jupiter?
No, you don't need a Jupiter. But you do need a build. You need a build plate that's going to be big enough. So if it'll print on resin, for sure. That's my preferred resin. I love it. I love everything they can do. I have a Saturn.
Okay.
And I'm able to take the full size outer radius of these textures, and I can stand them on end. I mean, I'm a little adventurous. I'll print them vertical with supports on the outer edge, and I can print a whole outer edge on my Saturn, and then of the circle, and then go to the middle section and the center section. So you do have to have a build plate size, but if you don't have something that's that big that can do a full outer ring, that outer ring, you get files that it cuts it in half. So now you've got 2 smaller sections that you can print, so you're not having to tower
like on a Mars or something, right?
Yeah. And then if you've got a PLA printer, then you can print it flat, and it'll take a whole quarter easily. You won't be able to do the full thing, but you can do quarters at a time. I have a CR10. Love my little CR10. It chugs along, and it can print a whole section at a time.
We got a question from Samaflage. What question? Could they be made stackable? As easy as sound? Could you have pre-built stages stacked on top of one of each other?
Love that idea. And the answer is, yeah, they definitely could be made to be stackable because, as Christian showed when he showed you the bottom of it, the bottom's just, it's flush. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't be that difficult to make little risers that would go in each corner and or at the end of each piece and have it stand up.
Well, one of the things that I'm looking at, Chicago version.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things we were talking about at Haster the other day is that this to me looks like it could also be like a bridge piece.
Yeah.
So if you did some sort of edging treatment on it, and you could easily put some like little, cross boards or something on the side of it and make like walkways for around like your elven tree village or something, right?
Oh, absolutely. I have visions of like a starport where the outer edge is a raised gantry that's all the way around, and
that would be cool.
They're standing on diamond plate, metal, but it's all on these little risers, and below it is the main deck. And so when you're ready to go from the riser to the main deck, you just lift the gantry off and away you go.
And looking at this, like I would want the FDM frame ideally, but it could go. Like if you wanted to, it could go, and you could just use the ring inlays on like felt or something.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And at that point, it becomes a whole different setup, especially if you want to make a big map, right? You could do the hexagons or the squares, and you could just blow this out and make a whole tile set with it as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's got tremendous flexibility. One of the things that's also that I'm looking at that could be a stretch goal if things were to go really well is expansions. So because it's 4 quarters, if you wanted to divide the left and the right half of the forest apart, you put an insert in the middle that's a river.
That'd be neat.
And so it's up to the imagination. You can pull all 4 corners out and fill that in and set it so now your forest is significantly bigger if you've got players that are mobile or large parties.
Yeah, I'm liking the idea of that expanser piece. That would be a good thing.
The digital kit bashing opportunities here is also I want to crack open Blender and just like get the town making custom inserts.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's honestly, that's the fun that I have had in the creative process. This is something I've worked on for a couple of years now, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm a designer, that I couldn't get into Blender or into Mesh Mixer and make a miniature to save my life. But I can go in and work a texture and take something that looks like a muddy field, and I can put a bomb crater on it and create like a more of a World War II or a post-apocalyptic torn up environment. So yeah, it's so much fun to get into the file and just play around with it and see what you can do.
So how did you get in? Like, how did you make the jump from, hey, I love playing games, to I'm going to start this company and try to launch this really cool terrain? Like, where did that enter your brain space?
Okay, so it really started with my son, my older son, who he just had this desire. He came out of high school. He went to college. He got his college degree. He came home at the end as he was graduating and said, Mom and Dad, I'm not going to get a regular job. I want to start up my own company, and I want to make Dungeons and Dragons third party material. And I'm like, that's awesome. And as mom, she was a little bit more practical. She's like, how are you going to buy a house? And how are you going to get insurance? And I'm in the background going, So he took the plunge, and he started his company, and he wanted to create a book full of encounters. And I was there to help him with it. I was kind of part of a little bit of the creative side of it and coming up with ideas and writing things up. And as we were doing that, I thought, I love that he's doing this, that he wants to be part of the community. And I thought, that's something I'd always kind of in the background wanted to do. Back in the late 90s, I was fortunate. I did some cartoons. I did a comic strip called Swordplay, and it got picked up by Dragon Magazine. It ran for a couple of years with them in most issues. And I loved that. And I thought, well, let's do something different. What can I do? And I thought about what parts of the game do I find challenging. And every time I would think about something different and what I thought I could do, it always came back to the terrain. It always came back to, what are we playing on? And like everybody that's on here, you know, if you've played role-playing games most of your life, you're right, you've tried everything. You've made it yourself, or you've bought it, and nothing was really, it just didn't work. And then I saw, you know, the Ultimate Dungeon terrain, and I'm like, okay, that's got potential. That's something cool. But styrofoam breaks, styrofoam crushes, scratches, and when you do styrofoam, that's all it is, right? So you got to have a whole bunch of those if you're going to do things different. And so I just started kicking ideas around, and I've got, you know, and Kristen knows this, the gaming community here where we live is amazing.
It is.
It's so amazing. Many people playing so many games. And so I got into that. I started going into people that I gamed with, and I would show them my concepts, and they would try it out and give me feedback and tell me what did and didn't work. And it's a couple of years to get to this point. At one point I was making them out of cast resin, which I do not recommend for any.
Just floppy silicone molds.
Yeah, floppy silicone molds with the resin and trying to level it so that it comes out right. And
I've done that.
Oh my gosh! And then when I finally did have something, I'm like, this looks good in cast resin. It weighed like a small safe. It was so heavy that if anybody wanted to buy it, I'd be like, okay, it's twice as much for the postage as it is for the thing. So you gotta learn. But yeah, I mean, it really, my son was a great inspiration to me, and he continues to this day. So
we have a question from Blessed Samoflange. Will there be blank templates, no detailing, just the base sizes for those who want to build it?
I'm going to go out and say I had not thought of that, but that's awesome. So yes, that will be when you know, as this comes through. My goal is I will have a storefront set up. I do want to go through my mini factory. And so blank templates would absolutely be part of that. I think that'd be fantastic.
And then I am hoping this is a big success because it's a cool system, but nothing is sadder than like when the systems come out and then they get abandoned. And it's like, because I love it if my dream is like this becomes successful. And then like next year and year after that, I'm like, ooh, what cool new inserts can I buy?
Yeah,
I can make my own, but I'm also lazy.
It's true. And especially when you said vertical printing and resin. So I'm envisioning almost a whole board on a plate or two and just set it, forget it, you know, dry brush it up later that night and boom.
I got the shipping notification for my Saturn 3.
Oh,
yeah. I can sit them side by side. I can pump one of these things out in a day.
Yeah.
No, I love these. I'm a gamer today. It's not like I stopped playing. You know, every 2 weeks the group gets together, and I've been the forever DM, but this year, because of other like huge house projects that we've been working on, we've turned the reins over to other people on the team, so we kind of rotated. But I mean, I love making these. It's like just having these conversations, new ideas come up.
Oh yeah,
and so. I mean, I'll be making terrain textures for a long time and just thoroughly enjoying it.
And like,
I'm trying to muscle my way into their group.
Yeah, no, you've got an in. I mean, when I talked to Landon about it, and he's just like, "Hey, we got an open seat. We'll bring you in for sure."
Yeah, sure.
With also the way Kristen talked about it, like you can get a lot of mileage with the textures you've already. You've had 4 textures you're showing off right now, or is there more than that?
I've got 4 that we're showing off right now. Well, 3 that we're showing off, a 4th that got unlocked as part of the Kickstarter, and then even more that will get unlocked. But we're talking, you know, things like ancient lost cities where the ground is a certain type of stone that lends itself to like perhaps a Far East ruin setup, desert, the open ocean. One of the ones that just opened up was cobblestone. So we'll have cobblestone streets, and then there's just so many ones that can be done. It's exciting and fun. So I don't think I'll ever run out of ideas.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Before we call it quits, where can people find your work and getting involved with this project?
Okay. Well, thank you. I absolutely have loved this. I'm having a great time. If people want to check it out, and I really hope you do, head over to Kickstarter and look up Battlestages with an S by TPK Terrain. We've got different pledge levels that will go from first pledge level is just to have a single shape. If you just want the round one, you get all the files in the round one and all the stretch goals. But you can also hit the next level up and get all 3 of the shapes and then all the files for that. All the way up to there are a limited number of spots where you can actually have a custom terrain texture made that you want, and we'll circulate that amongst the group. So that's over at Kickstarter, and I would love it if you guys swing by and take a look at it. Maybe leave a comment if there's something that you have a question about, and
we'll have a link. We'll have a link to the Kickstarter in our show notes to make that easy for our listeners to get to it. Definitely. And anything you want to shout out, Kristen, before we bounce out of here?
I am really closing in on that 7K one-shot thing that I'm doing on TikTok. So same username over there, 7th Mastery. When I get to 7,000, I'm going to pick a bunch of followers and run a bunch of games for people. So if you want to play D&D with me, go check it out.
Awesome. And for me, I don't have anything else to shout out, but I am looking forward to seeing as many of you all at Gen Con as possible. If you are going to be at Gen Con, make sure you do comment or pop us a message on the socials. We definitely want to know who all of the awesome 3D printing people are going to be there at the con, because it's so much more fun to meet you all in person than it is to connect digitally. Until next time, I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perram.
I'm Kristen Sowards, also known as 7th Mastery, and don't forget to use your screen protector.
Our guest this week was Matt Guss. Thank you all, and goodbye.